Welcome. We're so happy to have you here. My name is Susan Ryan. I'm glad they wrote that down. I might forget. And I'm a member of the HASP Science, Medicine, and Technology Curriculum Committee. Our team is happy to bring you today's session. Please take out your cell phones right now and ensure they are silenced so as not to distract from today's presentation. Thank you. Also, welcome to the crowd joining via Zoom in the HASP virtual classroom. Special thanks to our course technician, Dave McGinn, for supporting our hybrid modality. Next week, we are having our monthly program a week early due to tulip time. Brian Huffman will be speaking on Tuesday, April 30th at 9:30 at the Jack Miller Center for Musical Arts on the topic of marathon swimming. Brian Huffman is an accomplished ultra-marathon swimmer and West Michigan local and will be sharing his firsthand accounts of swimming the English Channel, the 20 bridges swim around Manhattan and Lake Michigan. Wow, he doesn't need a lifeguard, does he? If you have any questions or comments to pose at the appropriate times, we can kindly ask you to wait for the microphone so all participants can hear you. Online participants may share any questions in the Zoom chat and our technicians will relay them on your behalf. And now I am happy to introduce Billy Bellinger, who will be speaking on the topic of avoiding airline accidents, a pilot's perspective. Captain Bellinger received a BS from Syracuse University and graduated from the Naval Flight School. He served in the United States Navy for 17 years, including stints as the P-3 Orion mission commander and as an instructor pilot. He tracked Russian nuclear submarines during the Cold War before moving on to Naval Reserve duty. Thank you for your service, Billy.
Thanks, Susan.
Captain Bellinger was a commercial pilot for U.S. Air and American Airlines for 35 years. We should feel safe in the hands of this expert. So sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and please check again to switch off your phones to silent mode so we can all enjoy hearing about what really goes on in the cockpit.
Good morning. When I check in for a flight, this is too loud. When I check in for a flight, I'm given a piece of paper and on it's my co-pilot's name and how much experience he has in the airplane, not how much total time, but just the airplane that we're going to fly. And at the end of my career, I was flying the Airbus 321, which is 190 passengers. It's a domestic flight. We're not going international. They do send it out to Hawaii. But I also was flying the 319 and the 320, which is the exact same cockpit, but they made the fuselage longer. And they put in more passengers and a bigger engine and more fuel. The co-pilot would actually get a slip on me. We don't know each other. We have thousands of pilots. I might not see the same guy again for another 6 months. And on it, it'll tell you how much experience I have on the airplane, what my name is. And we start off with the introduction. And the introduction usually goes like this. He goes, hi, Captain Bellinger. I'm Jeff, and I'm going to be your co-pilot today. And I go, great, Jeff. Where do you live? He goes, oh, I live in Holland, Michigan. I go, that's a great place. And he'll call me captain a couple of times. And after about the second time he calls me captain, I will say to him, I said, Jeff, if you want to keep calling me captain, you can. And it's okay because it's a show of respect and the positions that we're in. I said, but everybody else calls me Billy. Okay. One of the reasons I do that, because I don't want to be, I want him to feel like he's my friend, not a co-pilot, and I'm some sort of deity over here. Okay. And I want him to feel free to say anything he wants to me. And then I'll probably ask him a couple personal questions. I'm trying to build what they call cockpit resources management. Cockpit resources management is, I don't care how good you are, there's going to come a day when you're going to make a mistake. And you want that guy to catch the mistake. And you want him to feel free to speak up. Even if he's wrong, okay? You want constant input from him. And you want this thing to be a team. You don't want to be the sole authority in the cockpit. He just does what you said. We're a team. So I look at more like we're two pilots going flying together and we're friends. The next thing I'll say to him is, Jeff, when I'm flying, I will fly the airplane according to the book. All the procedures I will follow to the most minute detail. And our procedures are so scripted out that even when we do something, the vocabulary is word for word. For example, we don't say landing gear up. We say gear up. And that's so there's no miscommunications. I say, I'll fly it according to the book. So now he knows exactly what to expect out of me. He knows darn well that I expect the same thing out of him. The next thing I'll say to him is, if I'm not doing something according to the book, I want you to speak up. Maybe I don't know what the book said. Maybe there was a recent change. Okay. And I said, and if I deviate from the book before I do it, I will tell you why I'm deviating and we'll go over it together. So the whole idea here is to develop this rapport with your co-pilot so that you operate as a team and you get the best efforts out of both. Makes no difference. We got to leave the ego at the gate. The only thing that matters is the safety of the flight. So we walk away becoming good friends. That I can tell you that in the history of aviation, because I not only study the airplane and study the company procedures, I've been studying airplane accidents ever since my first flight at age 20. And that is one of the things that causes accidents, where the co-pilot won't speak up. He's intimidated. So you could say they don't have any cockpit resources management. That's the official language. But he's not comfortable flying with the guy. The guy is overbearing. And he's got more experience and he's the boss. You don't want that. So all of the airlines operate on this premise of the only thing that matters is at the end of the day that between the two of you guys, you get it right. You guys have to correct each other because you are going to make mistakes. With the major US carriers right now, if you go out to Grand Rapids Airport, you are literally talking millions of flights between accidents. And that's not true worldwide. Some airlines aren't as good as that. But in the United States, I can't even keep track. I think the last I heard, we've had 3 million flights with no accidents. And the other thing about accidents is just because you have an accident doesn't mean you're necessarily going to die. Most accidents are a problem on the runway. The airplane slides off the side of the runway and everybody evacuates because it was icy, or the captain rejects the takeoff and the airplane ends up going off the end, and maybe you damage the airplane, but most people don't get killed. So overall safety, we're talking millions of flights between accidents. So if you think about it, start off with, in my 35 years at the airline, I saw thousands of pilots come and go. And then eventually I retired. I can count on one hand how many did not retire. And these guys are out there flying, maybe 10, 20 flights a week for 30 years. They're flying thousands of flights, but they all retire. Okay, so safety in the airlines, every time there's an accident, we study the accident. We try to say, how can we make sure this accident never happens again? And so they come up with a procedure, a checklist item, or technology improves. And so what happens is actually from a safety point of view, we actually are getting better. And we're at the point now where the record's astounding. There's 365 days in a year. If you live to be 100 years old, you have 36,500 days. If you went out to fly an airplane every single day of your life, you die of old age sitting in the back. So safety-wise, we don't have a problem. Now, that's not true worldwide. There are some airlines that have problems, and I'm going to address one of them. So I'm going to cover different subjects. Mid-air collisions, running out of gas, okay? Or, it was a perfectly good day. There was nothing wrong. And how did these guys crash the plane? What's going on? So you learn from each one of these. And in aviation, it's all the little details that matter. Okay, you have to focus on the little details. And by doing that, you get the big picture. Okay. So I will be covering accidents. But by the time I'm done, you think, gee, it sounds like they're out there crashing every day. Okay. But the normal flights are, to be honest with you, they're boring. There's not much going on. It's the same thing. Every single flight is almost identical. So that's part of it. What do we got here for an overview? Let's start with that. The first large airplane I flew was in the Navy. And this airplane right here. This is the P-3 Orion. It was designed for anti-submarine warfare. I've had this airplane in the air for up to 14 hours. You can fly out over the middle of the ocean, go looking for a submarine, find them, track them. If we're at war, you could sink them and you could fly back. So a lot of flights in this airplane. To this day, this is still my favorite plane, probably because in the Navy, if you think about the limits of the airplane, what are the operating limits of the airplane? We're operating at the limits. In the airlines, these are the limits of the airplane. They don't want anything to do with the limits. They want to get as far away from the limits as they can get. So Navy flying was much more hazardous than airline flying. When I got to the airlines, I thought, this is really docile. All I got to do is take off and land. You know, this thing here, we're operating at 300 feet off the water all night long, maybe in the Mediterranean, looking for Soviet submarines that are coming to the surface to charge their batteries. You know, I was a Cold War pilot. And of course, all that changed with Reagan and Gorbachev up in Reykjavik. It was the end of the Cold War, the breakup of the Soviet Union. But I was around during the Cold War. So that was my job, was to go after Soviet submarines. I did that with this airplane. This airplane is called a turboprop as compared to a straight jet. You actually have 4 jet engines. Each one's producing 4,600 horsepower. But rather than blowing all the exhaust out the back, you know, like it would with a balloon, they capture the exhaust and they run it up to the propellers, and they use the propellers to pull the airplane through the air. So you give up a little bit of speed. By that, this airplane is operating around 360 knots. A commercial jet is operating around 460 knots. Okay, so yes, it's slower, but it only has to go about 3 hours to where the submarine is. And then you actually want to get really slow, which a straight wing can allow you to get slower. And you want to stay in this area, and you want to do it for a lot less fuel. So this means this will save a lot of fuel as compared to a straight jet. It's still a pretty fast airplane for getting there, but once you're there, the name of the game is go slow and stay in the area. So knots. How many in here know what knots are, nautical miles? What can you tell me? I'll go with that. Okay. So 100 knots, okay, would be 116 miles per hour. Okay. Why do we use knots? And where do we come up with our current mileage? Okay. Let's just a little background. Your car is done in what's called statute miles, 5,280 feet in a statute mile. Airplanes, the reason I'm telling you this is because as I keep talking, every time I'm going to use the word knots and nautical miles, because all ships and all planes navigate with knots and nautical miles. Your car is in statute miles, 5,280 feet per mile. A nautical mile is 6,035 feet, give or take 1 or 2. Okay. The reason for that, okay, you have on the world, you have latitude lines, and you notice they're all exactly spaced evenly apart. Longitude lines converge, but latitude lines are divided into nautical miles. Okay. 1 degree of latitude equals 60 nautical miles. So since the world is charted in nautical miles, that's why we use knots. And that's why we use nautical miles. Okay. I could literally take this. I used to do this when I was doing a ton of transoceanic with the Navy. I would literally take a chart, not this, but a chart, and I would say, Oh, here's the Azorian Islands, and we're going to the United States, and that's 20 degrees north latitude, and that's 30 degrees north latitude. So that's 10 degrees. And we found that 1 degree equals 60 nautical miles. So that's 600 nautical miles. So I could literally just go like that. Well, there's 600. And I could go 6, 12, 18, 1,800 nautical miles. Close enough. Yeah, with the wind shifting and all that, it'll be a little off. Make sure you got enough fuel. That's the only thing you got to do. But you're going to be going about 1,800. And you can go all over the world just like this. You could also, as while I'm at it, and I got this out here, you may have heard of the Great Circle Route, because the Earth is not flat. You look at a map, it looks flat. So you want to go from Murmansk, Russia to Washington, D.C. So we're going to put the little string here on Murmansk and come down here to Washington, D.C. And you just discovered, well, there's the route. We're going right over the top of Greenland. Okay. And then you say, well, how far is it? I don't know. Let's put it on the equator and see what we got here. We got 0, we got 60 times 600, 3,600 nautical miles. Just like that, you got it. So next time you go on a long flight, you want to see what your route is, just pull out a string, put it on a globe. You'll find it pretty close. You can even figure out the distance. So nautical miles and knots. The P3 is 360 knots. An airliner is about 460. Okay. One of the things I'm going to talk about today, when it talks about accidents, I'm going to bring in technology, how the technology that I started out with changed and how that technology improved things. And I'll give you one example that you're familiar with, GPS. I used to fly this thing all over the world, right over the middle of the ocean. We didn't know where we were. We had an idea. And we always figured, you know what, if we're within 50 miles of what we think, we're doing good. Okay, now we know exactly where we are. We've had airplane crashes because they didn't know where they were. In fact, one of the major causes of accidents in this airplane was navigation, because we're operating really low. Sometimes the visibility is very poor. Okay, and we would literally fly it right into the side of an island. And our navigation was off. We didn't know it. So we lost airplanes due to navigation problems. Airlines have lost airplanes due to navigation issues also, where they'd be down low, they're in mountainous terrain. And in the past, you will dial in this and figure out where you are. And so all of a sudden they're a little off. And next thing you know, they right into the side of a mountain. GPS nowadays, it'll never happen again. And I'm going to go one better. Okay. Not only does the GPS tell the pilot where he's at, okay, but there's a database built into the airplane, because now we have computers. And the topography for the entire world is built into that database, including the antennas, including the power stacks at Port Sheldon Consumer Power. They're in there too. As soon as the airplane gets lower than any of the terrain in the vicinity, without even turning the system on, it turns itself on. And you start getting the navigation display. You're looking at this display in front of you, which is shows you, I mean, out to 180 miles, where you're going, what there is in the, in that area. Like there's the airport, there's another airplane. It'll pop up red. It says, hey, you got something out there that's higher than you. And it'll pop up red exactly where it is. It could also use the color yellow, which meaning it's only a couple thousand feet higher, red meaning it's really bad. So these things, these accidents that we had in the past, where you might make a mistake, particularly with that airplane, will never happen again. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know if I'm going to go into it, but I came very close to one of those accidents. Okay. And it was navigation was screwed up. And we were in the middle of the Mediterranean. It was 300 feet at night. We'd been out there. We got 10-hour flights in the Mediterranean every night. We're looking for the Soviet submarines that come to the surface, and they want to recharge their batteries. Everybody thinks in terms of submarines, they think, oh, the submarines are all nuclear powered. Well, that's not true. There's a lot, the ones that are going transatlantic and trans-Pacific are nuclear powered, but in the local areas, there's still a lot diesel electric subs. They come to the surface at night, they run their diesel motor and they charge their battery, and then they go under during the day. And if he doesn't have to go a long distance, he can operate on electric batteries all day long, as long as he doesn't try to go long distance. So we'd be out there 300 feet off the water. You can't see anything. It's you got fog, you got clouds, okay? Your navigation is not good. We did not have good navigation back then. And you know what? We didn't even realize it. We thought we would say, well, you got to do this and you got to do that. And we would do the best we could. But, GPS comes along and all the pilots like, wow, Christmas is here. It's like, this is something that God gave us, so we don't have these accidents again. So there's a lot of technology like that goes on in aviation. All right. I've digressed from my original plan. Let's go to this guy. How many remember Larry's lawn chair at 15,000 feet over the top of Los Angeles Airport? You got it. Okay. So Larry, I forget his last name. He wanted to be an aviator. And he applied to the Air Force, could not get in. He never got it out of his head. So finally, he decided one day, I think I'm going to use some balloons. And these are weather balloons. I'm going to tie it to the lawn chair. And I'm going to just go about 100 feet off the ground and kind of drift across the topography. And you guys can follow me in a car, like a hot air balloon. Larry Walters. So 1982, this was all over the news. By the way, he was on the David Letterman show. His chair is in the Smithsonian. Okay. So Larry starts blowing up these balloons. Well, where are you going to get the helium for the balloons? He goes, hey, let's go down to the toy store. That's where they got helium for balloons. He starts blowing them up. And pretty soon, the lawn chair is lifting up in the air. So he ties a rope to the bumper of his truck. And he's like, okay, I think it's time to go. Well, Larry, how are you going to get down? He goes, I got a BB gun. I'll shoot out some of the balloons. Okay. Well, what if you start coming down too fast? He goes, you know what? You got any of those water bottles, those 1 gallon jugs? Let's fill them up. We'll tie them to the side. I can, get rid of some weight. So he's got his lawn chair tied to the bumper of his truck, and he's got these helium balloons lifting it, and he climbs up in his lawn chair. No seatbelt. Let's hope we don't have any turbulence. He gets tossed out. And he goes to his girlfriend. Okay, you want to release it? She goes, no. And he goes to his buddy. No one will release it. So Larry cuts the rope. Okay. And he thinks he's going to go up to about 100 feet. He just starts shooting through the sky. And he lives just south of the Los Angeles airport. Before he's done, he ends up at over 15,000 feet. Okay. Every 1,000 feet that you go up, the standard lapse rate of temperature is 3.5 degrees. So the temperature has started dropping. 10,000 feet, 35 degrees. 15,000, throw in another 17, 45, 50 degrees. The temperature is now 50 degrees colder than when he launched. Let's say he launched at 70 degrees. It's 20 degrees outside. He wasn't dressed for it. Okay. He didn't think he was going at 15,000 feet. In addition to that, the air gets really thin. You're starting to have a hard time breathing. It's too high. And the next thing you know, here comes US Air 506 heading to Los Angeles Airport. Los Angeles Center, US Air. Yeah, go ahead. Got a guy to launch you up here at 15,000 feet with a bunch of balloons. And the controller's like, okay, when US Air gets on the ground, they need to get drug tested. And along comes the next jet, and this is probably Braniff back then. Braniff 701. We've had reports of a guy in a lawn chair at 15,000 feet. You see anything out there? And he goes, yep, he's there. So anyhow, Larry Walters. Larry finally decides, I'm getting cold. I'm having a hard time breathing. It's time to get down. I'm getting scared too. He pulls out the BB gun. It's a pistol. He pops one of the balloons. Then he pops another balloon and the thing starts coming down. Well, he didn't follow the correct procedures. There are correct procedures. It's like you should tie the BB gun to the chair in case you drop it. And you should be wearing a seatbelt, but he wasn't following those procedures either. You need to follow the correct procedures, Larry. He drops the BB gun. Okay. And now he's coming down. And he's starting to come down kind of fast. It's getting a little scary. Well, okay, I got those water bottles, and he pulls out his jackknife and punches a hole in a couple water bottles. Now, I don't know if this is true, but the story goes there's some guy out back of his yard there near LA, and it's a nice sunny day, and all of a sudden he gets a couple buckets of water on him. Eventually, Larry comes down, and he ends up, there's Larry. He's not with us anymore, by the way, but he is a famous aviator, and there's his water bottles. And he ends up in the power lines. Okay, so he's hanging in the power lines. The police come, they get a hold of the electric company, they shut the power lines off. The power electric company comes out, they get a bucket, they get him out, and now the police are like, what laws did he break? They don't know. But anyhow, he ended up on the David Letterman show. But Larry is, he's famous. He's at the Smithsonian, his chair is, and some of you probably remember that. So I remember at the time I heard, I was like, this is insane. Okay. All right. So much for Larry. Let's move on. I was going to mention this at the bottom of my little thing here. Every 9 months, we have to go through 3 days of training and examination. You have to get recertified every single year. And in that, you'll have 1 day of ground school. You'll have a total of 8 hours in the simulator. And in the simulator, they're just throwing one emergency after another at you. Okay, here's an engine failure on the runway. Here's an engine failure right at takeoff. Here's a landing in the fog. Here's a single engine landing. Okay, now you got an engine fire. It's just one right after another. Okay. And you got to get them all right. So you're always having to review and study. I mean, this would be like, okay, I became a doctor, but every single year I got to take the med boards again and I got to get recertified. In a way, it's intense, but in another way, the guys like it because it's our chance to practice. We don't get to do this in the airplane. Okay. You start studying you have to go through this every year. If you fail it, you're going to get a chance to get some extra training and a chance to do it again. If you fail it again, you're fired. What are we going to do with a guy that can't pass a check ride? Can't fly the airplane? He's no good to us. So it is a little intense, but the guys pass it. If you make a small mistake, like overall, the material and you make a small mistake, they'll say, hey, Billy, why don't you tell me about the flap speeds again? And he goes, you don't know your flap speeds. Like, that's really bad. But he'll go over it with you, whatever it is. It's probably not going to be something as drastic. If you don't know your flap speeds, it's probably, you're probably out of here. Maximum speed for extending flaps so you don't damage the airplane, too much pressure. But if you make a small mistake, they'll go over it with you. And then about 30 minutes later, the instructor's going to bring it up again. You can say, what's the answer to this? In other words, if he doesn't hear you giving him the correct information, you're not done. And you must walk out of there with essentially 100% understanding of every single thing they want you to know. The guys actually like it. It's a chance to practice. We don't look at it as an exam. We look at a chance, okay, we get to do this. But at the same time, we realize you got to get it right. So, but that's one of the things that helps to make sure that the guys are on top of their game all the time. I will tell you this. I did retire 5 years ago. The thing I miss most about it, I started off with this introduction to my co-pilot. Those guys were great. I mean, some of the best people I ever met in my life were my co-pilots. You become friends with them. Every single one of them is highly motivated to do a good job. Every single one of them studies what he's supposed to know and a whole lot more. When we get in the cockpit, We go back and forth. We start telling stories. Hey, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? We're always checking each other and sharpening each other. That's one of the reasons aviation is safe. Ultimately, if you want safe aviation, you've got to have responsible people. Okay. And I will tell you, these people are highly motivated to do a good job. And in fact, there is one question that we always ask in the back of our mind. Okay. And that is, when I'm flying with this guy, he's going to fly, the co-pilot's going to fly every other flight. Would I put my wife and kids in the back of this airplane if he was in charge? That's the one question we always ask. And if the answer to that is no, well, we have one of two options, but we will police each other. We will turn each other in. Okay. But there's two ways to do it. One is you can go to the chief pilot. Okay. Then the chief pilot's going to call up the other co-pilots that he's flown with, or maybe the other captains that the co-pilot's flown with. He's going to start asking them questions. The problem with going to the chief pilot, and by the way, the chief pilots are really good guys too. They're just pilots that represent the company now. They are in a position to put your job in jeopardy. But he's going to start asking questions. He's going to start checking with all the other pilots, and then he's going to call you in. But the problem is your job is in jeopardy. Okay. There's something else that happened in aviation. It took a while, and we're going back decades, and that's called the pilots union. And I will tell you this, regardless of what you think about unions, when it comes to the pilots union, they are the most safety focused group of guys you could ever meet, and gals. Okay. They have in the pilots union, they have what's called a standards board. They have like 2 or 3 pilots that are based on standards. So you don't have to go to the company. You can call them up and you're talking to a fellow pilot and you say, hey, I was flying with Billy. And you know what he did? He did this, this, this. It's not just he made a mistake and that was the end of it. It's like, no, there's something wrong with him. He's not following the procedures. He's not following the book. He thinks he can just do it his way. And so the safety guy is going to check with the other co-pilots. He's going to pick up the phone. He's going to call Billy. He says, we want to talk to you. This is the union guy. And he said, we've got some complaints from some co-pilots that you're not flying the airplane the way the book says. Okay. And here's some of the stuff. What do you have to say? So anyhow, let's suppose the guy says to the union guy, I don't want to talk to you. I'm not interested. Okay. He's going to go, all right, fine. I'll meet you at the chief pilot's office then. Because the union guy, okay, as much as he's your friend, he's not going to tolerate the cockpit not being done properly. He doesn't want you around either. And he'll join the chief pilot to get rid of it if necessary. Now that rarely happens, but it gives you this idea that we're policing each other. Okay. And that's one of the things that contributes to our safety. Everybody knows when you show up with the other pilots, like you can't sit over there and do whatever you want. Otherwise, I'm not going to go along for the ride. If we can't operate the cockpit together as a team, then we're done. Okay. We'll call in sick. We'll shut the airplane down right now. You show up, you're under the influence of alcohol. We're not going flying. Because if we do, I'm equally responsible. So we check each other. All right, let me move on. There's the Airbus 321 again. That was the one I retired off of. We're back to the P3. Okay. And on this slide here, if you look at it, we've already been over this. P3 Orion Sub Hunter, 380 knots versus 450, 1.15, 5,280 feet versus 6,035. That's basically the P3. This was my favorite plane. I got to do some P3 stuff. Okay. Let's see if there's anything in here. Oh. Okay, this is just a little sideline. How many airline flights a day are being flown over the United States? The answer is about 28,000. This is a picture off of FlightAware. You may have heard of it. You can actually go to FlightAware and you can see all the airplanes where they are. This is a picture. This picture was shot at, this is the exact same information that's being transmitted to the air traffic controllers. And it's being put on a computer and you can watch it. You can even go, let's say you're supposed to pick up your wife at the airport at 7:30 tonight. You can even look up her flight on here and see exactly where it is. But this just shows you the number of flights that are being flown every day, 28,000. This is a close-up of what it looks like if you were to zoom into the New York City area. And then I put the cursor on this one right here, and that says, oh, that's United Airlines 1036, and he's at 31,900 feet, and he's climbing, and his destination is Aruba, and he's going to be there 12:51 p.m. But that just gives you an idea of how many flights are being flown. All right. This is the cockpit of a P3. You have 4 engines, and because you have 4 engines, you have 4 throttles for the co-pilot, 4 for the captain. There's 1 engine, 2 engines, 3 engines, 4. So you see a lot of stuff here, but it's just a lot of duplication. It's just times 4. And all this stuff here, you got a flight engineer, he watches all that for you. And this is old technology. This is the way it used to be before they had computers. And so we had to have a specific instrument for the temperature, for the oil pressure, for the oil quantity. Then we got computers. It's another P3 cockpit. And then we got this. And everything is on a TV screen. All that data, it's all organized here and here and here. And you just have TV screens you look at. And this is much easier. You can see all the information you want just by looking at one screen. So it just gives you an idea of the technology, how it went from, I think we call it analog to computer. Okay. I want to point something out here to you. You see this stick right here? Most airplanes have a yoke. The Airbus had a stick. You fly it like this. Okay. He's got one too. This is called fly-by-wire. In the old airplanes, it was cables and pulleys. There were problems with cables and pulleys. The cables can get jammed. Okay. If you buckle the floor, okay, like there's something goes wrong, you buckle the floor. This is, you say, well, I don't trust electrical signals back to this sends electrical signals to the computer, which sends it back to the hydraulic package, say for the elevator or the rudder or the ailerons. But the thing of it is, there's so much redundancy built into this. Like if one of the computers quits, it's like, who cares? If one of the wires breaks, who cares? We got 6 or 7 different systems running off of this thing. We only need one of them. Okay, so this is called fly-by-wire. And that's going to become really important in one of the actions I'm going to go over. I drive a Honda Odyssey. I looked up the Honda Odyssey engineering specs. My Honda Odyssey is drive-by-wire. I'm not connected to the steering wheel, to the wheels anymore. There's no gear and pinions down there. You could tell your car, if you had the old gear and pinions, there'd be a little slop in the steering wheel. Now, like, there's absolutely no slop whatsoever. It's like it's always perfect. That's called fly-by-wire. Now we have drive-by-wire. But this is what's going on with everybody. It has tremendous advantages besides reliability, and that is you can tell the airplane, you can program the computer. We don't want to stall the airplane. Stall is when you get too slow and the wing's not flying anymore. So if the airplane's getting close to stall and the pilot pulls back on the stick anymore, it goes, nope, I'm not going to do that. This is it. You're not going to go any higher than that. It can do other things too. If you get too high and you're in a pitch, it can nose the airplane over a little bit. Okay. I'm going to throw this at you. This is just a little something on fly-by-wire. You all remember the landing in the Hudson with Sully Sullenberger and Jeff, trying to remember Jeff's last name. Jeff actually used to fly co-pilot for me when I was on the MD-80. Great guy. Sully goes into the landing, and the airplane is about 130 knots. He's got the nose up, and he wants to pull the stick back a little further. But 130 knots is very close to the stall speed. Nope. That's it, Sully. That's all you're going to get. But he had 10 degrees nose up, okay, which is a good pitch for the water. But he wanted to even try to cushion a little more, and the fly-by-wire said, nope, you're running the risk of stalling the airplane. We're not going to allow you to do that. It worked out fine. But it's an example of fly-by-wire. Okay, more of the Airbus cockpit, maybe a little better picture. There's the stick. See that red button right there? That's called the disconnect. Let's say the co-pilot's flying, he's really messed up, and I'm sitting over here. I can press that red button and I can disconnect him. It's like, now it's mine. Okay. So that's going to come up again later. I know it doesn't mean much to you, but all these things become really important at some point. That's another guy inside the cockpit of the P3. It's just one of the pictures that I like. Okay, we're back into the P3, and we're going after Soviet Delta SSBN. This was my primary target when I was in the Navy. I know this is not aviation, but I got to do it. Okay, you see this big hump? Okay, inside that hump are missiles. You can launch these missiles from underwater. They will go up into outer space. Every one of these missiles has a nuclear warhead on top of it. In fact, for every missile, remember the missile's only going to get the weapon there. There's actually several nuclear warheads. And so as the missile begins to re-enter the atmosphere, say at 100,000 feet, the 7 nuclear warheads pop off it, and each one has their own target. These nukes are bigger than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This guy, by the way, this is the biggest nuclear threat in the world throughout the Cold War and even today. Okay, this is the problem. You can make out these hatches here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 more on the other side, 16 hatches. So he's got 16 missiles. Each one's got 7 nukes. That one submarine can take out a whole country. Okay, and here's the problem. You don't know where he is. So how are you going to stop him? You know, if it's a land-based missile or even an airplane en route, pretty much know where they are. How are you going to make sure that you can take him out? And that's what we did during the Cold War. We would track these guys. We would never let one of these guys go anywhere 24 hours a day, all month long, without somebody tracking him. With the idea being, don't even think about it. There's another picture of the hump. This is a modern day Russian SSBN submarine with ballistic missiles. They go up in outer space. There's an actual missile shot. It's a test. He's firing it from underwater. There's 1, 2. You can see another one there in the background. Okay, and this was the P3. You got the bomb bay door open. Okay, it's just a picture of a submarine. These are all holes in the bottom of the airplane, and we can punch out what's called sonar buoys. Sound travels through water better than it does through air, much better. So these are sonar buoys, are listening devices. They have microphones, and then they transmit the data back up to the airplane. And so we can put microphones in the water, and we'll pick up the noise from the submarine and go, he's over there. Okay, how accurate? Well, it's like a blind man. It's like, oh, I can't see him. I hear him. It's like somewhere in that region right there. Okay, so let's go over here and let's pop in another sonar buoy. You pop it in, it says, oh, he's over there. Well, where do these two intersect? Right here. Okay, so you got a pretty good idea where he is. So out of the bottom of this thing will come the sonar buoys. All right, this is magnetic anomaly detector. It's the exact same thing they have at the airport when you walk through the metal detector. The metal detector has a magnetic field, and if you break that magnetic field by introducing a piece of metal, like in the old science class, you could put a bar magnet, you put all the metal filings around it, they start attaching themselves to it. If you break the magnetic field, then it says, hey, we got a piece of metal. This would sense the magnetic field of the Earth. And if you fly over him at low altitude, even though he's underwater, he'll say, hey, there's a large chunk of metal you just flew over. By the way, we don't use that system anymore. That's old technology. They don't need it. It worked like this. It was okay. We had missiles on the wing. This is old. This airplane's been replaced. But in the world today, worldwide, it is still the #1 search platform for open ocean search and rescue, where's Malaysia 370, go find a submarine, go find a surface ship. You know, the problem with the Navy is all their ships are slow. And you want to know what's going on 1,000 miles over there? Well, send that guy. Okay. And then all the fighter jets off the Navy, they have very limited range. You know, they go through a lot of gas. They're all small. But he got missiles that can sink ships. So he was an interesting platform. I actually had a chance to fly off the carrier when I went through flight school. It was one of the things I was being offered. The problem is it was right after Vietnam, and the fighter guys off the carrier, they didn't have any mission. They're literally sitting behind desks like this. What are we going to do? Those guys were flying 24 hours a day, chasing Soviet submarines all over the world. And so I go, I want to be an airline pilot. It's like that guy right there. I want to be an airline. In hindsight, yeah, I would have loved to have done the carrier. And this is some of me now. But looking back on it, that was a chess game, and it was fascinating. This is inside the P3, just a little bit inside. Remember I mentioned those sonar buoys, those listening devices? Well, there they are. Okay, and there's the guy in the back working them, and he's going to put them in the holes and fire them out the bottom when we want them. They will send a signal back up to the airplane. It'll transmit all the noise. If I had a listening device in the parking lot, you could pick out the engine noise from my car is different from the engine noise from your car. And you can say, oh, that's Billy's Honda Odyssey. If you could print all these frequencies out, just like my voice is different. So every single ship submarine has like a fingerprint when it comes to noise. They're not all the same. And we have a big database, so we know exactly who we got. That's the sonar buoy coming out the bottom of the airplane. We had two types of sonar buoys. One was passive. It would listen and say it's over there. And the other was active. It would send out like the old World War II movies, the ping, ping, hits the side of the boat, and it comes back. Well, the nice thing about the active sonar buoys, you know exactly where he is. The bad thing about it is, okay, he now knows that you're tracking him. And we're not allowed to do that. Because that's about the equivalent of me putting a gun at your head and cocking it. Because since I know exactly where you're sitting, you're going, well, what's coming next? Okay, and if you got two submarines out there that are, opposite sides, and one pings the other, you might get a torpedo coming back at them. It's like, I'm not going to wait for you to pull the trigger. So you're not allowed to do that under the rules of engagement. But the technology was there. This is the sonar buoy coming down, headed for the water, a little chute. This is it underwater. It's going to be a listening device. And then it's transmitting back up to, you got two different airplanes here. You got a helicopter and you got a French Atlantique, and they can both home in on the same sonar buoy and get the same noise, and print it out. And so you can have more than one guy tracking a sub. This is another picture inside the P3. These are where we call them the sensor operators. We call them the whiz kids. These are the guys that read up all that data, and it's all printed out on there, and they're sitting there, they analyze all that noise, and they know exactly what it is. I used to say, if those guys can't read their screens and analyze that data, then up front in the cockpit, we don't have a clue as to what's going on. That's where it starts. Okay, so I was flying with a guy one day, and he had been a prior F4 fighter pilot. And we got there, we're doing some tracking of a submarine. In this case, it was just practice. And he's like, bang, 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 all over the place. And I go, Tony, if those guys start throwing up, you got nothing. I said, here's the deal with this airplane. Do not spill the coffee. Okay? You've got to get the info from those guys. You can't do that. They're sitting sideways. They're not looking out the window. They don't know what you're going to do. Tony was a great guy. Just like that. Stopped it. And he never did it again. He's like, got it. Okay? I had the same attitude with the passengers. Don't spill the coffee. Okay? That was my attitude. And I got to share this with you. I had 40 years in large airplanes. I had incredible training. I was trained by the Navy. First I went up to the local airport and learned it all myself at the local airport. Then I got to the Navy. Then they trained me all over again. Then you go to the airlines, you get it more again. And I got to tell you, the airline training and the Navy training that I received was, it was so good that I was just amazed. I was like, wow, these guys are good. You know, they really did just an absolutely incredible job. They were really dedicated. Keep in mind, that's the key thing with this whole thing is you got to have dedicated people. So I had incredible training. And consequently, after 40 years of large airplanes, I never even had a turbulence injury. I had no accidents, didn't damage any airplanes, not even a single turbulence injury. When I retired, I got to tell you, if you've ever harmed somebody in an airplane where you're responsible, that's the only thing you're going to remember. You know, and so I feel very blessed to have a clear conscience rather than being haunted every day by, well, you know, of all the things you did, there was only one flight that mattered and you messed it up and people died. And so I don't have to worry about that. But there's some guys that have that nightmare. Anyhow, so don't spill the coffee. That was the name of the game. Just a little more P3 stuff, then we'll move on. This is your navigator and your communicator. Now you got to understand, you're not just talking on the radio because everything goes out encrypted and all the stuff coming back is encrypted. Okay. And this is the quarterback of the team. You can see his little display up here. He's got everything in there that's going on. And we're kind of like up front, we're kind of like the halfbacks. This guy's basically calling the shot. This guy's basically calling the shots, and then we're kind of executing the plan. So I just had to do that. What else? Okay. Oh, here's a torpedo. You're looking down into the bomb bay, and this is a torpedo. Now, this is not your World War II torpedo where you drop it and it goes in a straight line. This torpedo, got to be careful what I say. This torpedo will drop into water. It will lock onto him, and no matter where he goes, it will keep right after him. It will not let him go. Okay, so I will tell you that if you drop that on him, you're probably going to sink him. There it is, leaving the airplane. It's got a little parachute. It's going to hit the water, and you're going to sink him. Okay, these are a bunch of subjects I could cover, but I might come back to this. So is there anything in here? Let's move on. Okay, this is something else that's changed. This made things a lot better. You have satellite communication. The airplane is constantly, because all this computer, every single thing that's going on in that airplane is constantly being communicated to the ground. It's like we're being monitored. Okay. What's our airspeed? What's our altitude? How much fuel is on board? What kind of malfunctions are on the airplane? Where are you? And you got a dispatcher on the ground that watches you all the time. I was going into Rochester, New York one night. It was icy. I turned on the wing de-ice, and I immediately got a warning in the cockpit, which said the wing de-ice had failed. And so, okay, no big deal. I mean, we can land with it, but they're not going to take off tomorrow. They got to fix it. I called maintenance. I said, hey, we're on the ground, and we got a problem with the wing de-ice. He goes, yeah, we know. What do you mean you know? He said, we already got the report. Well, how'd you get the report? What time did you get it? Well, we got it at 8 p.m. Well, that's the exact time I turned it on, and I got the message here saying the wing de-ice wasn't working. And at the same time it gave me the message, it sent it to him. They know every single thing we're doing, okay? Even to the point now where when you're shooting an approach into a runway, there are certain parameters you must be within sight. Like below 1,000 feet, you will not do a high dive to the runway, okay? You will be on the proper airspeed, on the proper glide path, okay, with the gear and the flaps down in the proper configuration, the checklist done, okay, and you will not exceed 1,000 feet per minute in the descent. And if at any time you can't meet that criteria, you just level off and go around and set yourself up again. It's all being transmitted, okay? And if you exceed any of those parameters, Probably the day after you land, you're going to get a message. Hey, Bill, what happened at the Charlotte Airport? ILS 36 left yesterday. It says you exceeded 1,000 feet per minute in your approach. So it's all being monitored. Okay. This is actually very good. It's not a snitch machine. It's actually something that helps everybody out. One of the ways to have a really good system is when everybody is open, honest, and if you mess up, tell everybody so we all learn from it. Okay. Do not worry about being penalized. In fact, they won't. Okay. One of my flights, I'm going to see if I get into that. Let's see if I get the picture. There it is. Well, I'm going to skip that for just a sec. Okay, we're going to go into this one right here. This is part of that communication device. Okay, right there. That's actually my name on the flight schedule with Roger Webster. And this is July 10th, 1990. And we're going to go from Brunswick, Maine. This is the P3 down to Charleston, South Carolina, and back to Brunswick. We're bringing the Navy band back to Charleston. And when we get our weather brief, we're told weather's great. Okay, you come back here, clear skies. So how much fuel are we going to put on board? Well, we got to have enough fuel to get down there. We got to have enough fuel to get back. You always have to have an extra 45 minutes to get fuel in the tanks. That's a regulation. And then, well, you might need a little extra for what? Whatever. Okay, throw in an extra hour. So typically when you're in an airliner and you're landing, there's probably 2 hours of fuel still left in the tanks, even on a clear day. You don't want to be in a situation where it's like, we're not going to be able to land because we don't have enough fuel. We're going to have to land someplace else and get more fuel. You don't want to be doing that. So Roger and I, we got plenty of fuel on board because the weather's nice and clear. We go down to Charleston. We're on our way back. And we get about 100 miles out of Brunswick, Maine. It's probably midnight. We get the weather. It's all fogged in. It's like, oh, gee, we weren't planning on that. On the way back, this is hindsight being 2020. We've already made our first mistake. On the way back, we should have checked the weather, but we didn't. The reason we didn't is like, in order to find the weather back then, you got to pull out one of these maps. It's a dark cockpit. Where the heck are we on this map? Okay, there's a flight service station. It's kind of a headache, and we're tired. And we're like, the weather's good. We're told the weather's good. So we weren't even thinking about it. But back here, nowadays, all that data is being transmitted to the airplane, and there's a guy on the ground that's watching you. We didn't have anybody watching us on the ground. We got a dispatcher at the airlines. He's watching you, and he says, oh, Brunswick just went fog. How much fuel do they have? And we're going to get a message. They can communicate with us just like that. We're going to get a message. Hey, Brunswick just went fog. We don't think you got enough fuel. We want you to land in Boston. Solves the problem. But we didn't have that. So this is another situation where the satellite communication and all the computers talking to each other, and then also having somebody on the ground watching you, he would have saved us a lot of problems. So anyhow, this is what a runway looks like. And this is what they call the approach lights as you get close to it. This is called, these lights here, the touchdown zone. That point right there is 1,000 feet from the end of the runway. And on every single approach, you maintain what's called a 3-degree glide path to that point right there. 3 degrees, by the way, is 300 feet for every mile. So 1 mile out, you're at 300 feet. Crossing the threshold of the runway, you're 50 feet plus, 50, 60, 70 feet. So you will follow the glide slope until you cross the threshold of the runway. And you're probably going to be touching down right about there. That's called a precision approach. It's very precise. By the way, nowadays at the major airports, and I've done it. You don't even have to see the runway anymore. You put it on autopilot. You tell the autopilot what to do. You sit there and you watch the whole thing. You don't even see the runway. The airplane will get to 30 feet. The airplane will get to 30 feet. Can you hear me okay? And it'll start the flare. It'll pull the power back. It'll touch down with the nose high. It will apply its own brakes, okay? And it will track the center line of the runway until it comes to a dead stop. That's nowadays, okay? Back then, we didn't have that. So they're not even required to see the runway in the modern airplanes at the airports that are qualified. Just for info, this is what they call a non-precision approach. You notice you don't have all the lighting and stuff on the runway. This means we don't have a 3-degree glide path to the runway. We have an approach where you're going to go down to about 400 feet, no lower. And the airport's going to be, in that area somewhere. So you have to see the runway. And you got to see it about a mile out because you got to get rid of 400 feet. So that's what they call a non-precision approach. So this is another view of a precision approach from the cockpit. Okay. And just for info, see these red and white here? The white says you're high, the red says you're low. So you have an outside visual reference as to where am I? But we got fog in Brunswick. We weren't planning on it. So we're not going to see that. Okay. We shoot a couple of approaches into Brunswick, Maine at about 12:30 at night. We don't have a precision approach. We got a non-precision approach. We're only going to go down to 400 feet. It's all fogged in. I mean, chances are we're not going to see the runway, but hey, you never know. Fog can be patchy and we don't see anything. So we do a go around. We come back and do another approach. Same thing, hoping for patchy fog, go around. Okay, where are we going? Let's check Loring Air Force Base. That's 150 miles up to the north in Maine. This is Brunswick, Maine. Check weather at Loring. 0, fog. No visibility, clouds right on the deck. Okay, let's check Pease Air Force Base. That's down the coast about 75 miles. 0, fog. Where are we going to go? By the way, how much fuel we got? We weren't planning on this. We thought the weather was going to be good. We've already shot 2 approaches. Well, we got to go somewhere. So let's go down to Pease. We start down to Pease. I'm in the left seat. Roger's in the right. We're running low on fuel. The approach into Pease is a precision approach. It'll take you down to 100 feet. And at 100 feet, you have to see the runway in order to land. If you don't see the runway, you got to do a go around. We don't have enough fuel. We don't have a go around option. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, this may be the most important approach you ever fly in your whole life. And I'm really concentrating. Roger looks over at the fuel quantity because what's going to happen if we do a go around? We run the risk of engines flaming out, no fuel. Okay. Roger says to me, I can remember it word for word. He goes, you know, Billy, we don't have any fuel for screwing around. I didn't even look. I know it. All I know is I gotta just totally focus on what I'm doing. I've got to nail this approach. Means when you come down the approach, you can't be doing this and you can't be doing this because if you do, you're going to miss the runway. Everything has to be precise. Okay. And even the airspeed, I tell the flight engineer, just maintain 140 knots. I don't even want to be bothered. I don't want to be looking at engines or anything. Just give me 140 knots. You're not on my auto thrust. Okay. And I lock onto this approach and you start getting these heading changes of like 1 degree. Well, if you dip the wing, there goes 1, there goes 2 or 3 degrees. Oh, there goes another 2. You got this. And then, where's the runway? So what I actually did, and they don't teach this, but I had learned it, is you can just push on the rudder, which just make the back end of the airplane slide a little bit. And you just slide it and stop it, slide it and stop. We got down to 100 feet. That's what we saw. Do you see the approach lights? You don't see any runway. Okay. All you can see, you've probably seen this if you're driving down the road and the fog is really thick. You can't even see the road what you can see is the glare of the lights, maybe coming at you, maybe your own reflecting off it. And that's what we've got. But you know what? At least we know where the runway is. It's over there. Okay. It's at 100 feet. We're supposed to do a go round. It's like, not today. Keep it coming. Okay. So, your stomach you got a pit in your stomach. As we cross the threshold of runway, that's what it'll look like. Notice you don't see the blacktop. What you see is the glow of the lights, and that's the runway. You don't have any depth perception. You don't even know when to flare. Depth percentage is depth perception is based upon the areas beyond the point of touchdown rising and the area short of it going down. And the two of them together give you depth perception, but we don't have anything to see rising. So we don't have it. So it's just pull the nose up, pull the power back, and just sit there and wait. And pretty soon you're going to hear the wheels touch the ground. Then you come to a stop. And we made it. Otherwise I wouldn't be here. We pull off the runway, and Pease Air Force Base is, taxi to spot 12. I can't see the nose of the airplane. I said, send out a truck. So they send out a truck. He's got big lights in the back, and he pulls up in front of you, and you just follow him in. That's a situation where we almost ran out of gas, but that will never happen again. And it'll certainly never happen in the airline, because you got a dispatcher on the ground that's watching you. He's got this instant communication with you all the time. He's just going to send you a message. Hey, Billy, Brunswick, Maine's gone fog, and you're going to land in Boston. And you won't even go there. Okay. So that's an example where technology has made it a lot better. This is what an approach plate looks like. This is a generic one. And when you're at the cockpit of an airplane, remember, the most important things are landing and takeoff, okay? And then handling some emergencies in flight. But the most important things are landing and takeoff. So before we do any landing or takeoff, we've got this thing in our head, like introduction of the co-pilot cockpit resources management. We want to make sure that we're both on the same page and we both agree with what's happening, okay? So we're going to give a brief for every takeoff and landing. Whoever's flying the airplane is going to give the brief. He's going to turn to the other guy. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else I should have thought of? And we're going to get on the same page. Okay. So this is just some of the stuff that's on the brief. Okay. This is the ILS 36 left into Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay. And the inbound frequency is it's not all on here. Okay. The inbound frequency is going to be 108.9, and you'll point and verify you got 108.9 set in there, so you don't lock onto the wrong signal. Okay. And we're in the Airbus 319. And Jeff turns to me and he goes, hey, Billy, we're not in the 319. We're in the 320. Okay. So remember I told you how the 319 and 320, they all got the identical cockpit? How do you know which one you're in? Sometimes you don't, unless you get up there and you actually read the numbers. Oh yeah, all the numbers that start with a 1 are the 320, like 117 is a 320, but the 319s, they start with a 3, so it's like, but at least we've got it corrected. Okay. And in the reality, it wouldn't make any difference, but it is important to at least know what airplane you're in. And so, and we're going to say we got a 3-degree glide slope. The threshold crossing height is 52 feet. Okay. On this particular approach, we cannot go below 200 feet without seeing the runway. Okay. We have to have a half a mile visibility, and then everybody agrees, and then we do it. Okay. Once again, we're talking about having a coordinated crew and everybody following the exact same procedures. I could literally switch co-pilots every single flight and not even say a single word to each other. And we both know exactly what the other guy's going to be doing. This is one of the reasons that we're going millions of hours or millions of flights between accidents. It's so well scripted and choreographed. And once again, the guys are motivated, as are the girls. So the next thing is you have certain things that take place in the airplane that are critical. When you put the gear up or down, that's critical. Okay. Boy, When you raise the flaps, that's critical. So you never do that without checking with the other guy. So let's say I'm flying the approach and I say to the co-pilot, I go, I don't reach over and put the flaps on. I say flaps 1. Then he repeats it. By repeating it, he means I agree, which means you check the airspeed to make sure we're slow enough, and he selects flaps 1. Okay. And then I say gear down. So we don't operate the flaps. I can't reach over and put the flaps down. I can't reach over and put the gear down. I must verbalize it. He must agree. And then we do it as a team. Okay. So anything that's critical is all choreographed together. And if you want to start talking accidents, it's where those things aren't being done. Okay. So you're not following the procedures. You're not following the checklist. You got a problem in the cockpit with your attitude. You think you're the boss. The co-pilot won't say anything. And if he does, you don't listen to it anyhow. Okay. How about this guy? We did fuel. This is a true story. By the way, if you like this kind of stuff, on YouTube, there's Mentor Pilot, Mentor. And a Mentor Pilot is the most detailed, accurate, very long presentation. Fascinating. It's designed for pilots, and he will go over accidents. A Green Dot is another one that's less detailed, but fascinating. But all this is on, you can watch some incredible stuff on YouTube. Of course, they got movies too. This guy is Air Transat. He's a charter operation out of Canada. Okay, 236. He's an Airbus A330. He's got about 200 passengers on board. Let me see what the dates of this was. This was August 24th, 2001. He's over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You ready for this? He's going to run out of gas. He did. He ran out of gas over the middle of the Atlantic. How the heck did that happen? Well, he's cruising along at 39,000 feet, and his route is right there. He's going Toronto to Lisbon, Portugal. He left at 9 p.m. And you have fuel coming out of the left and the right tank that goes directly to the engine. You also have fuel in the belly of the airplane that's being fed to the left and the right tank. Okay. And it goes to the engine. So at all times, whatever fuel is being burned on the left should be approximate whatever it is on the right. But all of a sudden, he gets this on the right side. Hey, the fuel quantity is less on the right than it is on the left. And by the way, it's quite a bit less. Okay, so what do? They have a thing called crossfeed, which means I can allow fuel from this tank to go over there, and I'll balance it, and I'll shut the crossfeed off. So he opens up the crossfeed. Okay, and it'll be fixed in 15 minutes. Pretty soon they start getting some messages on their computer. Everything's computer now. It's all being monitored. It says, you don't have enough fuel to make it to Lisbon, Portugal. You're minus 2,000 pounds right now. And it shows up red. What the heck's going on? Well, it's all this computer stuff, and maybe the computer's wrong, but let's take a look. They start adding up the fuel and they go, we don't have enough fuel. Do we have a fuel leak? They get a hold of the flight attendant. They turn on the lights. They have the flight attendant look outside. We got a fuel leak? She comes back. She says, no, I don't see any fuel leak. Okay. Well, you know what? Probably got lots of fuel, probably a malfunction with the computers, but we're going to have to head over towards the Azorian Islands. Ever heard of the Azores? Ever been there? I was there for about a year. Oh my goodness. I mean, if there's any place in the world I want to go back to, it's the Azores. Which islands are you going to? Okay. Santa Maria? Oh. Wow. I love the Azores. I think it's the best place in the whole world. It's about 100 years behind the rest of the world. Everybody's really friendly. Nobody locks their doors. It's very picturesque. Okay. Well, they're going to head over to Lodges, which is one of the islands, Terceira. The runway is 10,873 feet. And yeah, I guess we got enough gas to get there. And that's okay for a little while. Pretty soon it says, we don't have enough gas to get to lodges. Okay. The heck's going on? By the way, there's your green dot aviation, your mentor pilot. Pretty soon the right engine flames out. No fuel. You're at 39,000 feet. You can't stay at 39,000 feet with only one engine. So you start dropping it down. You notify the flight attendants, we got some problems here in the cockpit. We may have to do a ditch, maybe a crash landing. We don't know what's going on right now. You get down to 35,000 feet, left engine quits. Middle of the night, 300 people in the back. Okay, well, turns out jets actually are pretty good gliders. The glide ratio of any jet is about 2.5 nautical miles. There's that nautical mile stuff again. For every 1,000 feet. They're at 35,000 feet. They got 2 to 2.5 nautical mile glide ratio. 35 times 2.5 is 70. This is what they're doing in the cockpit. They're doing 70 plus another 17, 87-mile glide max. Okay. How far out are we? 55 miles. We might be able to make it. Okay. How many times have you practiced landing engine outs? Never. How many times did they train landing engines out? Never. What happens if you come up a quarter mile short? Well, you smash into the rocks at 190 miles an hour. What happens if you come up a little bit fast and you touch down fast? Well, you might blow the tires. You might even go off the end of the runway. But how fast are you going off the end of the runway? I don't know, 40, 50 miles an hour. You know what? They'll survive if we don't touch down short. Number one thing you want to do is keep the airplane high. Don't get low because you cannot recover. Okay. So they start this, Captain Pichet, he starts this glide and he's actually doing a pretty good job. Co-pilot's calling out mileage, altitude, all that. And pretty soon, that's an actual picture of Lodges Field in the Azores, 10,800-foot runway. Been there many times. That's the town. This is superimposed. Okay. He's got it in sight. He's fast and he's high, which is what he wanted to be. But now he's got to get rid of some altitude. Otherwise, he's going to just bypass the whole airport. So he starts doing these big S turns like that, trying to get rid of altitude. He even does, which they don't teach in aviation, but little airplanes get it. He even does what we call a slip. So here's the airplane. You kick the rudder and you fly the thing like this, and you create all this drag on the fuselage. Most pilots, most airline pilots would not even think of that unless they're still messing around in little airplanes, because little airplanes do it all the time. And it's like, did you think of that? So he does a slip, gets rid of a ton of energy, and Captain Pichet makes it. Okay, and there he is on the runway. There's the tires. He blew them all. Okay. And he gets the Pilot of the Year award, but he also gets in a little bit of trouble. Why'd you guys open the crossfeed valve? That's what we do. It's what we all do when there's a fuel imbalance. Not anymore. As a result of that one right there, every single airplane in the world now has a procedure for opening up the crossfeed. You just don't reach up and open the crossfeed valve and balance the fuel. You pull out a checklist and you do some math. How much fuel do we have on board? 20,000 pounds. Okay. How much fuel have we burned? 10,000 pounds. That's a total of 30,000 pounds. How much fuel did we have when we departed? 40,000. What happened to the other 10? I don't know. You got a fuel leak. He had a massive fuel leak. His fuel leak was like a fire hydrant coming out. Let me see if I got the numbers on that fuel leak. 60 gallons per minute. Okay. Yeah. Now what had happened, then now we're into maintenance. It was, I think it was about 2 weeks prior. This is approximately correct. They changed one of the engines. These are Rolls-Royce engines. And as the mechanics change the engine, you got to run these fuel lines, but he was missing one of the parts. So he goes to management. He goes, okay, I'm missing this part, but I can make it work. I can do it this way and it'll work. Maintenance goes, okay, it's good. Problem is that fuel line was rubbing up against a hydraulic line till eventually it broke. And now he's got 60 gallons a minute coming out the tail of that airplane. And we're lucky he made it. So with that maintenance issue in mind, and I'm going to tell you something, okay? The maintenance that I saw in both the Navy and the airline was outstanding. I love these maintenance guys. I go out there, they explain stuff to you, they talk to you. They were very conscientious, okay? But in this case, up at Air Transit, okay, they had a profit incentive, okay? And sometimes you can get into that situation where we got to fly that airplane, we got to make money, okay? If you were at a union airline, and I'm not pushing unions, but I'm just telling you this way, and there was a maintenance union, you wouldn't be going to management. You'd be going to the union guy, or you'd be going to your supervisor. And he would just, I'm just telling you, because I've seen it before. This is the way it goes. It goes, no, that's not the procedure. There is no debate. Until you have the proper part, you don't do it. Well, they might cancel the flight. We don't care. That's proper maintenance. Okay. When you're worried about, oh, well, the company wants to operate the flight. Okay. You start taking some shortcuts. It'll work out. Well, it will a lot of times, and sometimes it won't. Same goes for the cockpit. Way back in the beginning, we call it management pushing pilots, making them fly unsafe airplanes and stuff like that. We're not talking airlines now, but none of that goes on nowadays. So these are the types of things that make it safe. Just doing it the correct way, having a high level of responsibility, not taking any shortcuts. If you have a mechanical problem and the pilot handles it correctly, you're probably going to have a successful outcome. If you have a mechanical problem and the pilot makes it worse by making a mistake or doing the wrong procedure, now you got problems, okay? The number one thing to do is slow down. Whenever you got an issue, unless it's something you're about to run off the runway, take about 2 seconds to catch your breath and think before you react. We have pilots, and by the way, I'm not talking US. I'm actually talking Pakistan Airlines, which I haven't even addressed, that react. They don't think. And when they react, they make a bad move. And then they don't follow the procedure. And then they make another bad move. And then they make another bad move. And they're just reacting. And then they got an accident. So you need to slow down and think. If you have a pilot that makes a mistake, like we did with the fuel going into Brunswick, Maine, and you kind of get it together and salvage it, good. But if you make any mistakes at that point, you don't have that luxury anymore. Occasionally, extremely rare, there's a situation where there's just something that you cannot handle. Okay. And my squadron had that issue. And this is the plaque from my buddies that lost their lives September 22nd, 1978. This was so bad. This was so bad. The number one engine climbing out 12,000 feet ripped off the airplane, hit the tail, took the tail off the airplane, and they just tumbled. They didn't stand a chance. So we had to bury him. So sometimes that happens, but that's extremely rare. Well, kind of like this picture here. First of all, this is what you call the nav display. It's 20 mile, 30, what do you got? 20, 40, 60 miles, the heading. This is you. This shows everything around you. That's actually Charlotte Airport. This is your airplane, that's the ground, that's the sky. And primarily you're looking at those two things. It's just a nice photo. Nothing to learn from that. Um, love this. This is a nav display with computers. It used to be before computers that the air traffic controllers made sure you didn't run into each other. Then they come up with this system about 20 years ago, terminal collision avoidance system. My airplane talks to all the other airplanes in the area. All of them talk to me. This is me. This is 10-mile scale, 15-mile scale. That's another airplane. He's 500 feet below me. He's considered a threat. He's climbing. He's climbing. He's 500 below and he's climbing up into my flight path. Okay. This guy is a lesser threat. Kind of keep an eye on him because he's further away. This guy has no problem whatsoever. He's white and he's far enough away that he's not an issue. He could change if you went over that direction. So we actually in the cockpit now, we can see all the other airplanes around us. And it's like, it's fantastic because that essentially means no more mid-airs where occasionally controllers would make a mistake, or maybe it's not even the controllers making a mistake. Maybe he can't get a hold of the airplane because the guy in the cockpit was supposed to switch over to 123.45 and he dialed in the wrong frequency. And now he's not talking to anybody. Okay. And he doesn't even realize it. Okay. So sometimes that happens, communication breakdown. So this is one of the new gadgets, terminal collision avoidance, and it is without a doubt, it's our favorite. Okay. So, we were running out of time. So anybody got any questions? I'm probably about halfway done right now. How about a question? Yes, sir.
Did you ever have any significant passenger disturbances while you were flying?
Okay, it depends on significant. Okay. So, well, okay. So I threw 3 people off the airplane. Now this is over 35 years, only 3. And it's almost always alcohol. And I didn't want to throw anybody. I had alcohol problems. I would take them off onto the jetway. And I would say, you kind of screwed up. You said something to the flight attendant, you should correct your language. I kind of said, give him a second chance. Okay. People make mistakes. I make mistakes. And he goes, yeah, I did. And I go, well, why don't you apologize? And we're not going to be serving you any alcohol. And he goes, okay. And you're going to follow all the instructions. Yeah. Okay. Shake hands. And he goes to the flight attendant. I go with him. And he goes, yeah, I'm sorry. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I've had too much to drink and I won't have any more. Okay. That was most of the time. And every once in a while, someone gets a little belligerent. They start giving you, I've taken them off the airplane on the jetway. I'm talking to them. They start giving you a hard time. You give me a hard time on the ground. Why would I want to take you flying? You're out of here. Okay. Then one night I'm going Philadelphia to Fort Lauderdale and I get the call from the flight attendant. We're, up at 35,000 feet. It's the middle of the night. And the flight attendant says, hey, we got a guy sitting back here in first class, says he's an air marshal. Well, air marshal means he's carrying a gun. Well, there are no guns in the back without me being notified before we depart. Every single guy that's got a gun, fills out a slip. I know exactly who he is and exactly where he is. Okay. Well, who the heck is this guy? And he goes on to say, he's talking to the flight. He says, and there might be a problem on this flight. Okay. And then he goes back to his seat and he orders a drink. Okay. Air marshals don't drink when they're carrying their guns. So I'm on the little computer and I go, okay, who's sitting in 2A to the company? And they go, so-and-so. And I said, all right, right now he's not a problem. He's just sitting in his seat having a drink. Okay. But he says he's an air marshal and we need the police at Fort Lauderdale. Okay. So consequently, he didn't do anything more. So we didn't have to land. He didn't do anything stupid. He just sat there and had his beer. And we pulled up to Fort Lauderdale and on come the Broward County Sheriff's guys. And I swear these guys love going to the gym. These guys are brutes. And tell everybody, please be seated. Off he goes. And then I talked to those guys the next day. I said, what happened? He said, well, first of all, we got all his data and all that. He said, but it is a federal offense to, be imitating an air marshal. He says, so the FBI's headed over to his house today. We don't know what's going to happen, but he's going to get reprimanded. That was about as bad as it got for me. I will say this. Right after 9/11, the biggest threat was, the passengers. And every once in a while, it was right after 9/11, everybody's on high alert. I get a couple of guys sitting in first class. They'd be saying hello to the passengers, and these guys that you could just tell, they're gym rats, And I look at them, I go, if there's a problem in the back of this airplane, you guys are in charge. And they go, yeah, we got it. Prior to 9/11, the cockpit door was junk. You could lean on it, it would open. And it was always go along, get along, cooperate, go ahead, take them down to Havana, give them to Castro, and then go to the hotel. Okay. And get paid extra and a free trip to the hotel at the beach in Havana. After 9/11, though, those cockpit doors, Hulk Hogan cannot get through that cockpit door. Okay. I don't care how much time he's got. They're bulletproof and everything else. And you probably know this, but some of the pilots are carrying guns. Okay. They authorize that. You got to go through a really rigorous training. You got to get requalified all the time. But they kind of blew off that idea. The terrorist idea. It's like, it's not going to work out as well as it did on 9/11. So what we're more concerned about now on the airport is the guy walks into the airport with his suitcase and he just leaves it there by, the ticket counter, somewhere in the vicinity, and he walks out. And that's your bomb. So if you see a bag and nobody's addressing it, or you see somebody drop a bag and walk off, you need to get a hold of security. And that's what I always say. I hate it when they say this, but they always say, see something, say something. It's just like, because I hear it 1,000 times. I'm like, okay, but that's more of the current threat. Yes, sir.
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
With all of the automated communication between the ground and the airplane, what happened with Malaysia Flight 370?
Okay. All right. That's a huge question. Yes, I've studied it. Number one, I don't know. Number two, nobody else knows. Number three, some of the data you're being told is probably not true. It may be even created. So you got to check the sources, because in the history of aviation, I will tell you that if it results in significant financial consequences to the industry, the airline, the country, or significant political consequences or a military issue, they will lie to you. Okay. So I don't trust half the stuff I'm being told on Malaysia 370 because it's just my nature. So what do we absolutely know for sure? Okay. We know that it's missing. What they don't talk about, and I don't like this, okay, it had about 440 pounds of lithium-ion batteries in the forward cargo hold, which is extremely hazardous cargo, which could set off fire, which could also set off toxic fumes, which would knock you out in nothing flat, okay? And so I sometimes wonder about that. They're trying to blame the pilot. I have a really hard time with that, as do all of his friends, all of his relatives. They said, this guy is the nicest guy you could possibly meet. He's always friendly. He shoots pictures. I was on his Facebook page like the next day before they took it down. He has pictures taken with all the crew members all the time. Okay. So literally, if he's going to commit suicide, he says, not only am I going to commit suicide, but I'm going to kill my friends while I'm doing it. I know these flight attendants. I know this co-pilot. Okay. He didn't appear to have any issues whatsoever, but they want to blame him. And that, you know what? That works out fantastic for everybody. Okay, everybody's off the hook. Okay. But I'll say something else. And well, there's two other things. One is years ago, when you were flying transoceanic, you had either 4 or 3 engines. Now we're down to 2. In order to be certified to fly 2 engines, the engine has to meet certain failure rates. By that meaning, this engine has we've been able to document, and they were Rolls-Royce engines, by the way, that this engine does not have a failure once every 3 million hours, something like that. Consequently, on those engines that are going transit, there's a transmitter, and it's transmitting the engine data up to Inmarsat satellites, and it's being recorded, okay, by Rolls-Royce. So we have data from those engines. That airplane flew for 6.5 hours and it ran out of gas. Okay. So that's from Inmarsat satellite. I'm assuming that they wouldn't mess with that data because there's too many people involved. But we also have something else. It is all the other stuff I was supposed to get to. Patience. There's Malaysia. Okay. Reunion Island, Madagascar over here. Okay. They found part of his flaps about several months later. So the flap broke off. There it is. The flap broke off, floated over to Reunion Island. The crash was March 8th of 2014. They found the flaperon in July 2015. The only way we know of that this flap could break off the airplane is if somebody extended it. And then it had to hit the water at an extremely high impact. In other words, not in control. Or, man, you really messed this up. By the way, landing on the water is not hard. It's really easy. Just pull the nose up and hold on. So they say, well, somebody had to be at the flight controls. So that's the evidence. And it doesn't match. Okay. So we don't know. But I do know this. Okay. I don't trust a lot of the info we're being told for several reasons, including I am overwhelmingly aware of accidents that are false reports. Okay, because there was a cover-up going on from the US. Let me throw one more at you. I'm sorry. Got to throw this at you. The press. Let's say I'm a journalist. I got a 3 p.m. deadline because it's got to get out tonight. It's paper or something like that. I don't know what happened. I'm on the internet. Check it. Okay, write that. I'm not an investigator. I don't know what happened. US Air had an airplane that ran off the end of the runway at LaGuardia. I'm not going to go into the details. It ended up on the approach lights above water. All the people got out. Nobody got hurt. And so you're reading, well, what happened? The reality is nobody knows what happened. It comes out, a couple weeks later, mostly through the pilot channels, not through the press. Here was one of the reports that I read from the press. The pilots left the scene of the accident. Whoa, these guys are guilty. Checked it out. Yes, they did. They were taken by the police to the hospital. And when the reporter showed up, they were gone. I'm like, this is slander. Okay. And then there was another report that said, the flight was running 2 hours late. The pilots could have been at the bar drinking. They do have bars at LaGuardia Airport. Okay. So what were the pilots actually doing? Well, they were actually on another flight inbound from Charlotte, which is well documented. And then they took that flight out. So things were running late and they had to call in a crew from Charlotte. But what is the press reporting? This is garbage. I know of a specific accident that I was tracking. I forget it exactly. And I was with my buddy and I must have read 10 newspaper reports on this accident. And we sat down and my buddy starts telling me, this is what happened. I go, not dead. I said, that's what the press is saying. I said, I read 10 articles. And I'm going to tell you, out of all 10 articles, only one of them got it right. Why is that? Because the guy that wrote that article actually is a pilot on that airplane and he understands it very well. The rest of them are just like, oh, I got to get something in the press and I got the 3 p.m. deadline and there, I'm done with my job. And it's like, it's garbage. So, yes, sir. So I don't know what happened to Malaysia 370.
We're going to have to wrap this up, but I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Your personal take on Boeing's current problems.
Okay. Once again, I'm gonna default to I don't know. I'm not there. I can tell you what I've heard. I can tell you my source is very good. Okay. It's actually that guy Mentor Pilot. And this is actually really interesting because in the aviation culture for the pilots, if I do something wrong, I immediately fill out a report and say, I messed up. And maybe the FAA gets a copy of what I did wrong. Maybe I got the wrong altitude. My chief pilot knows about it. And the first question they're going to say is, hey, Billy, did you fill out that NASA report? You know, it's where pilots voluntarily submit data. I did something wrong. This is what went wrong, you know, and I promise never to do it again, but let's all learn from it. We call it the get out of jail free card. Nobody prosecutes us. We are free to say anything we want. Spread the bad news, spread my mistakes, let everybody learn from them. This is what I've been told. At Boeing, it's gone just the opposite. We're suing you for billions of dollars. You're going to get fired. You better keep your mouth shut. Okay. And so the whole corporate culture is keep your mouth shut. Don't report anything. Okay. And by the way, we got millions of dollars of lawsuit. People are getting fired right and left. And so now you've created a whole other culture that is not dedicated to safety. It's dedicated to cover up and protect your six. That's what my info is. Do I know that explicitly? No. Okay. I just know that I've got it from one reliable source.
To end on that
I
note,
will say this, though. I think Boeing makes great airplanes. If I go out to the airport tomorrow and it's a Boeing airplane, I won't hesitate to get on it. And I can tell you something else, okay? If there was anything whatsoever wrong with that airplane, I guarantee you the pilot that's been flying that airplane all day long, he's going to fly tomorrow too. He's not flying it. The pilot is the first guy that's going to say, no. Okay, I'm not taking that airplane. If there's anything whatsoever, and I've been in that boat where I said, I'm not taking that airplane. Okay, there's a malfunction on it. It will get fixed. So I trust the Boeing airplanes. I'm not sure what's going on with the Boeing culture, but I'm not getting any good vibes off it. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
thank you, Billy. I think we're going to have a second class because we're out of time, unfortunately, but thank you so much. I think everybody learned some things today and hopefully we all feel safer about getting on a plane.
I got to show you my favorite picture. I got this from a little kid in the back. And I thought, usually you look at those crayons and you go, oh, that was nice. And you toss it. And I go, wait a second. Spent your whole life hauling little kids around, you know, and moms and dads, you know, brothers and sisters. I said, you know, that might be the best picture you got. Did I? Whoa. Okay. God bless. Yes.